I think the expectation was you were going to move into industry, designing for G-Plan or Urkel or Habitat or a manufacturer of furniture. But my heroes were sculptors like David Nash, Andy Goldsworthy, Richard Long. You work to a certain level, turn it over 180. And so I'm just joining up now, just working round, meeting the two up, and then go back to these missing areas. So that's the natural shape of the tree, but it needs excavating in more, so you get a nice deep shadow. And this is where those mind games about persevering and keeping going until you're happy with it, keeping going until it looks right, because you could stop at several points and think that's enough. The first sculptural things were some spheres, and I'd made one and it sold. Somebody'd seen that and said, could you make one for us? So then it was sort of sculpture and furniture, and then had a phase where I thought, right, I'm not doing any more furniture, I'm just doing sculpture. And I thought, this is it, I've made it, don't need to do benches anymore. And then I thought, actually I like doing benches or seats. You know, it's part of me. Why should I have to be one or the other? So I don't really sit into a discipline. I'm not a sculptor, strictly speaking. I'm not a furniture maker. The sketchbooks go back to the 1990s. I have one on the go all the time. That's where all the commissions that are ongoing, ideas that maybe never come into fruition. Sometimes you might have to go through making models, doing drawings, elevations, even samples of textures or maquettes. But if it was something completely new, like the first egg was, then that's just a question of showing them little pieces that might have a similar texture. There's got to be a kind of a leap of faith with the clients often. So this is really, you kind of almost need a microscope. The ends of this one are not resolved yet. The line disappears and you've got to resolve it into the new space. That bit there, I'm going to kind of sink in. The depth of it will sit quite nice because there'll be a deep bit there, so your eye will bounce from shadow to shadow to shadow over there. An architect said we're doing a refurb on an office block, very minimalist. It needed something to humanise it. Would you be able to do a reception desk, and we're not giving any requirements of a normal reception desk? It'll be flat on the top and the bottom and the back, and it'll be the front face that meanders and wanders to sort of express the character of the tree. And then that grid with the medullary rays and the annual rings, that just carved into the whole of the 5 metre length. So it's essentially a sculpture. Yeah. As much as it is scary, it's exciting because it's the biggest tree that I've ever dealt with, so quite a bit of it is unknown. First of all, we've got to take the bark off, just to see if there's any rot pockets or things that we might want to avoid or excavate. And then it needs to have 2 faces that are perpendicular to each other cut, so that we've got sort of a datum face to work from. And we don't actually know what is going to be in there. I just have an inkling that there's no one clear heart. So when it starts to shift and crack and move, it's not just one split to a heart. It's lots of tensions and splitting and moving within it because of all the many centres. So this is La Sfera, which is a sphere sculpture that we made for clients in Italy. Initially, the clients invited me to the site to get a feel for the space and the landscape and the building. So I sat and sketched for a couple of days and sort of starting to germinate ideas about what the sculpture might look like and what the textures might be on it that would be appropriate. And then the tree, this was a fallen tree in Petworth Park that we made the sculpture from. So we took the clients to see it, so they've got an understanding of where the material has come from and start to build up a relationship with that tree, with that wood. And then there's a process of extracting the tree, bringing it back to the studio. The whole log came back to the studio, so we made several pieces from that tree, one of which was La Sfera. So the template goes on and gets gradually rotated around the log to reveal the sphere. After that, it's about exposing the annual rings so we can see what's there, to get a good surface to bring into focus the annual rings and any knots. So we invited the clients to come and just look at that surface for me to talk through differences that might express very dry summers, or where the outset of a branch growing, where timber is compressed and pushes the grain around. These are things that would inform the end result. So yeah, then it comes inside the building and I start to mark it out, and that process might take a good few days or maybe even a week to mark it out following the annual rings. And then a process using only hand tools to carve all those annual rings, and the dilemmas that you get between a branch meeting the main heart. Artistically, you've got decisions to make. The tree is giving you most of the information, but some of it you have to kind of negotiate. And then raising it to a good working height. Once it's finished here, it then becomes oiled, so there's a protection, slow down the drying rate, and also a bit of protection as it's travelling. And then put into position in site with the help of M-Tech, using mobile gantry with lifting block and tackle. So we could position it within the planting bed on its plinth accurately, getting the right angle for catching the details at the right time of the day, sort of the setting sun or the sun coming up in the morning. And then watching it become part of the landscape, not a sculpture dropped from outer space into a garden setting, but it being part and parcel of people's experience of walking through there. And hopefully, because of having been to the site from the outset, the whole thing worked together because it had been carefully thought through from start to finish. There are degrees of concentration for whichever bit you're getting to. And then you start thinking, why didn't I just go straight at that bit? Does it actually matter on the whole thing? But then that's the slippery slope. It's all a test. Oh yeah, it's all a test. Nearly there? Ooh.
So I'm just looking for anything that's not quite right. Just any imperfections that I can see going over and just neatening up. Some of it I can't really see, but I can feel a ridge there.
This is walnut, which is delightful to work with. It's very close grained. You've got to have your tools really sharp, because if you cut it the wrong way, if you cut against the grain, you just tend to crush the fibres. And there are such little bits that I'm taking out at the moment that all the time I'm restraining the chisel edge from going on to the next one and taking a little chunk out of where you really don't want to take it or mark it. This is the grid in the tree that's being revealed. So this way I'm following the annual rings, like the latitude on the globe, and this way I'm following the longitude, the medullary rays that are in the tree, which are the annual rings are clearly visible. You can see the stripes of the annual rings, but the medullary rays in walnut, you've got to look a bit closer to actually see them. But you're given a clue by the fact that the wood will crack and dry along its medullary rays. And they're like the spokes of a wheel coming out of the centre of the tree, going to the edge, to the bark. So where that grid is formed, where you get the concentric rings being cut by the medullary rays, that's what forms what I'm calling the grid. It's a conversation with the wood, with the tree, so it's suggesting something, and then I might accept that or I might do something else. It's about looking closely and seeing what's suggested. And there are going to be problems, but there are always problems. Every tree has a problem. You find a bit of metal in the wrong place, or it's got a rot pocket that you didn't want to come across, but every tree has got all those characteristics. I haven't got to think of them as bad things necessarily, just accept them and work with it and try and turn it to your advantage, try and work together on it.
This is a facade for the actual desk, which will slot into the cavity, and I presume there'll be receptionists sat down at their desk.
It had massive, massive limbs, so that not there, that was one limb going off that way. It went into many branches then from that point down there. And there was a mega branch going that way as well, because the heart, the rotten heart, it sort of points downwards. So that suggests that the main stem actually we've cut off. There will be a big knot there where that part of it was going down, and then a branch going that way and a branch going that way. Yeah, like oak trees do. And all these little knots all mean that the grain inside it are all like there. How all the medullary rays are going bonkers around there. It's like a little galaxy. Or that one. There maybe. Something like that.
There's cracks there as well, though.
Let's see what that looks like. Yeah. I'm just trying to retain a little bit of the carving in some way. I've tried to do prints and things like that from pieces over the years, and never been that successful. I think we could do it in bronze. So to make little bronze castings, we're going to go to a foundry and say, how do we get like a little thing we can put on the wall, like a relief, like a topographical relief. Probably a couple of coats of oil and a few coats of wax, with a good bit of resting in between each coat of wax, and then buffed up when the wax has kind of penetrated. But no sanding at all. The sandpaper kind of fluffs up, whereas if it's a cut finish with the fibres, it's much softer, cleaner. That's exactly 5 metres. So we've taken off 50% of the weight already, about 5 tonnes. So I think it will actually just suggest where to push in and where to come out. So all this is going to be excavated, and here, so that will just swoop in there. You know, all this will be like the grid on the egg. We'll do some of it here, and then we'll put it on purpose-built skates and then roll it just in to the building. We'll just work on the top, but then we're going to have to bring it out and rotate it once more to do the very finishing at the back and the resanding on the top. We won't try and change the shape of that too much, because that's the very heart of the tree, isn't it? So we're going to have it digitally scanned by pangolin, and then have like little abstract details from it cast, because there's all this time invested in the original. So to be able to then have like an addition of 10 little details from it would be quite nice. But the overall shape was something I wasn't happy with, and then I thought it's too nice a piece of wood to discount, so then I just started working back into it, and yeah, doing it all with the incised carving. It's getting there. I've nearly done the outside bit, but it's growing on me.